You mean after the election's over?
Open the bloody
No, ma'am.
gate! Nobody gets in! Several orders! That pack of goblins will be on us any second!
What's going on?
Goblins are on our tail! Open the gate, Sevlor, now!
You let goblins here? Where is the druid?
Please! There's no
American
time!
elections. All here is Lord Donald
The
Trump.
nine hells! Open the gates! Cannon! No!
Form a line!
Damnable roach! Provoke the blade
Okay.
and suffer its sting.
On the dot that those early stars processing early reserve working this afternoon, those will still be uploaded this evening. And I think Ms. Williams mentioned to you the fact that we
Where do I go from
I don't
here?
know. Do I want to jump to the character?
the first two that were in Fulton County, and then others authorized called now, 357.
Breaks.
Sure. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I'll just give you okay. So by 8 o'clock, before 8 p.m., you will see all of your advanced voting totals uploaded. It's as well as the applications by mail that will be received on Monday. So all that will be uploaded by 8. As far as 177 locations this evening, they're being transported from 7 different locations. One of them is here where managers will turn in their members.
Drag her home.
And our goal is to have everything uploaded by 11. But you'll see the information will be displayed once it's arriving and you think it is. I'm sorry, we're trying to upload all 177 locations by 11 p.m. If we don't have any delays, but as they arrive, we will make an announcement and you'll see.
Dead now.
Yes. Yes, of course, the numbers are subject to change, so we have to make sure we have, still have applicants coming in from our offices. We still have provisionals that, that we can verify by Friday, but it will change. When the school comes forward, I think that like an update in terms of like how many numbers came in, including like provisional ballots and things like that. There's a new platform by the Secretary of State called Enhance. So we have to see the details on that, because exactly what it displays. But you'll be able to see exactly what is happening. No, it does not. The police does not need to be verified until Friday. Those are Friday by 5 o'clock. Verified on Friday. No. No, they're going out.
Fetish.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a great night. Better sound system.
By sickle and sword!
And you heard Eva there talking about what they're seeing in Philadelphia. They really are feeling good about the turnout that they are seeing
For their
there.
election night coverage, and with Tommy Ellis at the big board talking about the road to 270, waiting for North Carolina right now. The polls closed there. But how important is that to either candidate in terms of making their path to 270 easier?
Let's start with former President Trump, because he really needs to hold North Carolina. It was the only battleground state he won in 2020. So let's give him North Carolina. If he holds North Carolina, he flips Georgia and Pennsylvania, he gets 270. That's his easiest path. But Lester, if he can't win North Carolina, his whole map changes. Why do I say that? Because he can no longer win just 3 states. He has to win 4. He can do it by winning Pennsylvania and Georgia, and keeping the blue wall, or I should say tearing down the blue wall, Michigan and Wisconsin. If he can't go there, he has to go out west and win both Nevada and Arizona. That puts him over the top. But again, without North Carolina, his scenario,
We're losing. Harris has put a lot of money and time and people on the ground in North Carolina.
Well, look, if she wins these 16 electoral votes, it eases some pressure off her, right? Because her easiest path is the blue wall. If she can win Pennsylvania and North Carolina, look how close she is. She only needs 9 more electoral votes. Pretty much any other state, with the exception of Nevada, gets her there, and she's able to win there. So if she can take North Carolina, the Trump team gets much more nervous, and the Democrats become much more optimistic because she's won out east. If she can win the Midwest and take off a state out west or hold it, she's going to be the president.
All right, Tom, let's go back to Savannah.
Let's get it out to see
Wisconsin is a big part of it. It's Shaquille Brewster is in Milwaukee with some breaking news, and it's a possible
you talked
issue
to
with
Secretary of
ballot
State
counting.
Ron
Hey, Shaq, what do you
He's happy with the turnout today and how things are going.
Hi there, Savannah. I want to first start with what we're seeing at these polling locations, because locations are open for about another hour. I want to let you go inside. I can't go inside and report, so I'll let our camera go inside there now. We're seeing a steady flow of people at this location. There was a line that went on for more than an hour this morning. You see things have slowed down a bit. The reports from around the state is that the vote process is going smoothly, but where we are seeing hiccups is with the vote counting. We just learned from the clerk in Milwaukee downtown, where they are counting all of the absentee ballots and early votes at once, that the city of Milwaukee had to restart the processing or counting of those absentee ballots. They say an observer saw that while the ballot tabulators were sealed, the door wasn't properly closed on them, and after going through with a bipartisan team and making sure that nothing was tampered with, the city, out of an abundance of caution, decided to restart counting all of those absentee ballots. What this means is that as we expect results from this battleground state of Wisconsin, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. The clerk said in the past that they weren't expecting results from this city to come until after midnight Central Time. We now believe that timeline has shifted 2 to 3 hours later into the night. There's more than 100,000 ballots that those clerks are going to have to work through. So the vote is still ongoing right now, but be prepared to wait as those results come in later tonight, guys.
All right, Shaq Brewster in Milwaukee. We're used to waiting for Milwaukee so that we hour of this night. I want to go back to the table here. Hallie, you've been looking at some of the exit polls. I think you've got some North Carolina information and some interesting results.
So there's some conventional wisdom here, and then there's some data that flips the conventional wisdom on its head. So let's talk about that, specifically as it relates to these age groups. We know, right, the Biden coalition in 2020 that propelled him to the White House involved young voters, right? And for our purposes, young is 18 to 29. In North Carolina, and I want to show you here, you can see that for older voters, I'm talking senior voters here, President Trump won those older voters. That is not unexpected. His campaign has long thought that he would do well with seniors. But here's what's interesting. Look at Vice President Harris. She's got 47% of the senior vote. She's doing better than President Biden did with seniors in 2020 in North Carolina. So she is outperforming where he was 4 years ago. Then you look at that youth vote, right? Again, not unexpected that Vice President Harris would have a slight lead. And I would say this is very close. We are waiting for more of these to come in. More of these ranges are coming from the exit polls, but still interesting. But again, look at 48% for former President Trump. He is outperforming among young voters in North Carolina. See, if that's the conventional wisdom, they're overall sort of winning the groups, at least to a degree that we thought they would. But each of them are overperforming in the sort of flip side.
So then it sounded like you were talking about a huge role that the youth vote could play in the outcome of this. What do you think the pressures and polls leading into tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I first want to dig in a little further on North Carolina and what Hallie just said, because if we dig even deeper in and we talk about Gen gender in that under 30. It's similar to the trends that we've been discussing. Trump has improved what he did with young men. Tonight, 60% in our NBC News exit poll there say they support him. That is up from 42% that voted for him in 2020. Whereas with Harris, she's performing even better than Biden did with women. 65% saying that they support Harris in this exit poll, when 58% actually support
just North Carolina, or is that an
That's just North Carolina. That's our North Carolina exit polling tonight. North Carolina.
Line of sight, everyone gets frozen.
I've been talking with college Democrat and Republican presidents on campuses there, but the college Democrats were so organized in this state. Like what they did on these campuses was really amazing. They lobbied the state to have more polling places on campuses. They even had it be made that the student ID could be an acceptable form of ID on several campuses, which was not the case prior. We're also seeing this kind of play out to be right what we're seeing with that young men appeal for Trump seems to be working in some places. I'm interested to see if that continues throughout the night. We heard Gotti mention like those podcast appearances earlier in the night, Joe Rogan, Logan Paul, things like that. This seems to be where he is gaining that ground. I'm interested to see if it continues.
That's why.
And just underscoring how important the young vote is. The Harris campaign tonight touting the fact that they have Paul Rudd, for example, out trying to energize college voters.
Wow, let's get let's get the game going.
As well, keep them in line. Keep it
I'll give a fuck. Yeah, let's go. If you're into your mind. Oh no, what am I doing?
Speaks to how close this race
Oh,
continues
natural
to be.
one.
These results come in. On the other hand, you have
I didn't even mean to. I didn't want to appear to his mind.
Philadelphia,
Oh,
yes,
fuck.
in the Trump area. So we'll have to see how that actually bears out when we start to get results in Philadelphia. But it does speak to the fact that there's a real focus on this epicenter and on young voters.
And when we talk about young men in particular, and to the point that you're making here at the table, that the Trump campaign has really looked to turn those young men out, they're not typically the people who show up to the ballot box every 4 years. They're what's called those low propensity voters we've been talking about. I will tell you that the Trump campaign feels like they've been doing a pretty good job trying to turn those, not always voters into voters at least this cycle, because for them, that's one of the big keys. If they can get this demographic out to the ballot box,
wisdom
actually
roll, not
show up, whether
intelligence.
that was early or whether that's now, they're feeling like they're going to have some wind at their back.
It's, if you take a step back, the story of this election is the gender gap. It's the battle of the sexes election. And whether you want to say it's young men or senior women, it's men and women. If Trump turns out more men, he wins. If Kamala turns out more women, she does. It's kind of as simple as that.
No doubt about it. And what's so fascinating is that the Trump campaign tried this sort of unusual, unconventional tactic to get out the vote, which was to outsource it to Elon Musk, to other outside groups. And they were quite bullish heading into tonight, saying, look, we feel good about this decision.
Remember, the Harris campaign was concerned about black men.
In the governor's race in that state,
They brought
Republican
in
Governor
President
Phil
Obama
Scott,
to make the case.
term.
Any evidence right now of how that appeal
Continuing
has
his role as governor
translated
of that
to votes
state.
today?
Well, that's one of the things that she has talked about on the campaign trail. I met with the vice president not too long ago, and she feels like she needed to earn every single one of those black male votes just as much as Joe Biden would have. That's why you saw her. We talked about podcasts, doing like an NBA podcast, a football podcast. Sure, she did call her daddy to try to reach out to those young women. That's the name of course, that very popular podcast with women. But she also was trying to extend an olive branch to men. I would just say this: two things are true. Right? Kamala Harris. Let me say it this way: Donald Trump is doing better with men based on public polling right now than Kamala Harris is doing with women. Though that gap exists, but also remember that historically, women have turned out stronger than men in every election dating back to 1980, and so that is going to be one of the big key factors.
And that's why that moment with former President Obama was so significant when he called on them not to stay at home.
All right, so we're just a few minutes away now from a big batch of poll closings at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, including the one that everybody's been watching, Pennsylvania. And we'll be right back.
But we've been doing both the early voting as well as probably a boogie woogie that the Republicans will not see until we beat them in a couple hours.
Well, that's what we do in the book. Yeah. Well, let me take that question to you, Ryan, because that is an interesting question. The
Not going that way.
Side of the early vote, and we know part of that is just Donald Trump embraced it this time around. Was there an apparatus in place and infrastructure to then get out the vote, additional votes? Obviously, people are going to come out on election day anyway, but new voters into the fold. Or were these voters in the early vote people who would have shown up on election day anyway?
No, actually, when you look at all these battleground states, one of the things that we measure in the party is how many people voted early that never voted before. That's an important number because that way you can prove that you weren't cannibalizing your election day vote. In that category, the Republicans, as they're labeled, now some of them might drift off, but they beat the Democrats in every one of those states in that category. I can tell you from talking to the Trump campaign And I did talk to the president earlier today, but tonight, the Trump campaign's excited about Florida. Because if you look at Florida, 10 points up with 70% of the vote in, the panhandle doesn't come in until the 8 p.m. hour because that's the central time zone. That number is going to go up. So really what we have to look at now as a whole so far is just Florida. Virginia's been going back and forth. North Carolina's been going back and forth. And there's a county in South Carolina and Indiana that isn't in. Those are the things that I'm looking at to see what the signs are tonight for where this is going.
Just back to that point, because I think it's a key point. So in the early vote, the Trump campaign, in looking at the numbers, believes that it leads the Harris campaign when it comes to new voters in the early vote.
That's
what
right.
you're saying?
Yes, that's right. Because, there's always been said that, the Republicans are voting early, but they're just taking election day votes, cannibalizing those, and dumping them in the early vote bucket. But the way that you can analyze that is to say, okay, how many of these people that voted either didn't vote before or maybe only voted once over the past 6 years? Those are what we call zero voters, which are the people who never voted, and one voters, which are people who rarely vote. That's the real number that these campaigns analyze going into today.
Governor Christie, what are you watching?
Well, look, what I'm watching is when we stop speculating. Which is all we're really doing now, except in a few places. Think about what happened in the primary, in the Republican primary, in these swing states. In Pennsylvania, 157,000 people voted against Donald Trump with no opponent any longer in the race. In North Carolina, it was 300,000 Republican primary voters voted against Trump in that race. And, in Michigan, it was 250,000. So where do those people go? Are they in early vote or in election day vote? Are they going to actually go back to Trump? Or are they going to vote for Harris, or are they going to stay home? And those are not soft R's. Nobody's going to but those are Republican primary voters who said, with no opponent, everyone had withdrawn at that point in those states. They weren't voting for Donald Trump anyway, and they voted for Nikki Haley as a placeholder because she's the only one left. I want to see what happens in those states with those voters, because a lot of these Welcome to our election night coverage. We're coming up on the 8 o'clock hour here at ABS. We're looking at vote counting centers across the country in this historic election.
We were talking about this Nikki Haley.
Some polls have closed, and some places people are still voting.
They are indeed. We're about 6 minutes of the next poll closing, where we're going to first look
for example,
at the real vote count from the biggest battleground of Pennsylvania, which we've been talking about, states that have been moving quickly.
We are moments away from the polls closing, especially as they have been making a very aggressive push to reach out to those dissatisfied Republican voters, especially Republican women.
Biggest poll of the night.
To tolerate the idea of a second term. You'll see the Harris campaign,
one of the first
out there.
big polls of the evening.
In states, results from what may be the most important prize this election, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Daily voters. The race could all come down to the Keystone State.
Pennsylvania is extremely crucial.
The vice president Harris loses this state.
I don't know what's the
tell anyone how you
The
voted.
path to 270 narrows significantly.
We're going to win Pennsylvania.
What Mike said about Florida.
Donald Trump will stand by for the first vote count and new exit poll information from this critical battleground as our decision desk gets ready to make some calls on the road to 270.
He has a 10-point lead.
All right, getting ready for Pennsylvania. NBC Stephanie Gossett is in Philadelphia. Stephanie, this is where the Harris campaign really needs to ramp up those turnout numbers. What do you see?
Harris was going to win Florida, but that's got to be a
Yeah, they really do. Well, it's calming down here in northeast Philadelphia. This is kind of a working class, diverse community. Under the wire in these last few minutes, but the big question is how long is it going to take to call the state of Pennsylvania? 4 years ago, it took until Saturday. I was on the phone with the former Secretary of the Commonwealth talking about the challenges they faced back then. 2.6 million mail-in ballots. That was what slowed
In the
the
state of
process
Florida, I
down.
will point out, for
And
some
it was
reason,
a new
the Harris campaign
process
seemed
for
to know
people
this
in
was
this
coming.
state.
Maybe not
4
this
years later,
extreme.
they
They
have to
said, no,
change
look
the
at Florida.
law.
but it's got to be a little
there are
when they see
fewer
the margin
mail-in
is
ballots, just
far
under
wider
2
than Joe
million.
Biden just
They
4
have
years
new
ago.
machines.
We have
And
5
more
minutes
people,
before
but the
8 o'clock here.
optimistic
The key
outlook
state
from
of
election
Pennsylvania
officials we have spoken
closes
to
at 8
is
p.m.
that the
60 states
majority
about
of
to
those
begin
mail-in
reporting,
ballots won't be
including the
fully
Keystone states,
processed
19
until
electoral
Wednesday
votes up for
night
grabs there.
into Thursday
Just to bring
morning.
up to
And
speed,
if this
Georgia,
race
North
is as
Carolina
tight as
have
it was
already
4
closed.
years
Also
ago,
key
where Joe
battleground
Biden
states. I
won
see
by
Rick over
about
at the board.
80,000
New
votes,
numbers coming in.
those
Top of the
mail-in
hour. We'll
ballots
tell
will
you
be
where this race
crucial
stands. Don't
to
go away.
make the
ABC
call
News
here. So we're
live
still
coverage
talking
of the
days.
presidential race.
Yeah, and in some of these big
2024.
jurisdictions like
Election
Philadelphia,
night.
Stephanie, now they have election workers who are prepared to work all night and count all night. So it goes a little bit quicker. We'll check back with you a bunch. We have got Kamyanis over at the Big 40 who's still getting vote in from Georgia and North Carolina, two big pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Georgia right now because North Carolina, there's still only about 2% of votes in. Let's look at Georgia because I think what is happening here when we talk about Kamala Harris and her chances, she's overperforming Biden in some of these counties around the Atlanta metro area. I'm going to move the map over this way, so I'm going to bounce around. Here on this side, the right side, this is where Biden was at 2020. Here's what Harris is tonight, 76% in. You can see she's overperforming there. We come to this other county, Clayton County, again, to the suburbs of Atlanta, those green counties around Atlanta. 84% for Biden, 85% holding that high watermark. We move over to Rockdale. Look at this, 69% for Biden, 75% tonight for Harris. They're looking at these numbers tonight, and again, there's still a lot of vote out, but they're looking at these numbers tonight, and they're telling themselves this is the kind of rhythm they want for the rest of Georgia throughout the night. Only 25% of the vote is in. Trump is way on top, but again, 25% of the vote is in. Remember, we can show you guys where the vote is out. These giant bubbles, the bigger the bubble, that's how many votes still have to be counted. So you can see a lot of the rural counties, a lot of them are coming in. There's still some in the rural county that are out, but the big area, remember, 50% of the vote is going to come around the Atlanta metro region. Let's also talk about Pennsylvania, guys, because we're getting close to getting some information in Pennsylvania. And remember this, 2020, Joe Biden wins the state. It is going to be the keystone state and the key to the election tonight. Trump won it in 2016. The difference about 40,000 votes.
Why am I fucking
in 2020, he wins by about 80,000 votes. Biden does. The interesting that has happened, and we've learned a lot about Philadelphia, the counties around Philadelphia, places